Thank you so much for joining us today for Intune, a better way to upgrade to Windows 11 and manage future updates. Before we get into the presentation, just going to cover some quick items. One, you will get the full webinar recording and slide deck via email tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. And please use the Q&A section to submit your questions throughout the presentation. We will have a few minutes for live Q&A at the end. If we don't get to your question, we'll follow up with you individually after the webinar. And our presenters today, we have Jim Spignardo, Director of Cloud Strategy and AI Enablement at ProArc. Jim leads initiatives that modernize infrastructure, empower teams, and maximize ROI on Microsoft technologies. What drives him most is helping organizations cut through the noise and deliver real, measurable business outcomes. And we also have with us Greg Dodge, Director of Solution Development. Greg has extensive Microsoft background in an array of Microsoft certifications. Greg has spent the last 3 decades deep within the Microsoft ecosystem, executing Azure migrations, securing Microsoft cloud environments, and helping organizations embrace innovative cloud-first solutions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Great. Good morning. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So let's walk through what we're going to do today. So we're going to take a brief history of time, very brief, but we're also going to talk about the date that's impending. Right? There's a date that's coming at all of us, and what you can do for that date, being October 14th. Jim's going to then start talking about managing updates, traditional versus modern. We're going to go into Intune. We're going to go into some of the scope and approaches, and then we're going to actually roll the dice here and do some demos. We're going to do a demo of both Intune and also a product that we use that kind of helps everything go a little faster. Is what we call Nerdio, and we'll get to that, and then we'll have some resources to give you and some Q&A. So let's go ahead and get to it. So way back in 2015, Windows Azure was launched in 2010, but it was renamed in 2015 to Microsoft Azure. It used to be called Windows Azure. And even Intune was called something when it was launched in April of 2010, but it was renamed in 2014 to Intune. The Apple Watch just launched. Star Wars, The Force Awakens. That got mixed reviews. We won't go into that, but a lot of things were happening back then. We're talking a good 10 plus years ago. This is also the beginning of where Microsoft started out with Windows as a service, right? Windows as a service instead of as an operating system that you just buy. And I won't say the other one because if I say it, my you-know-what will pipe up right now because it's sitting on my desk, so I'll be quiet. So let's go to what's coming at us. So go ahead, next slide, Jim. So what happens in October, right? For any devices that are not enrolled in extended security updates, there will be no more security updates. Driver updates that are delivered through Windows Update, those typically will still happen, but you will not get any security updates from Microsoft without ESU. And then your devices essentially become, from a perspective, not fully unsupported, but they are approaching unsecured, right? Because if there are no known vulnerabilities and you don't have ESUs, then you won't have those patches for those known knowns, and that opens up your attack surface area for security vulnerabilities. And that can have downstream effects on your audits, on your regulatory, any compliance that you have. So the idea here is we want to try and avoid getting into this situation. It's not like Windows 10 is going to stop working. It's not going to like turn off and go, sorry folks, I'm out of here. That didn't happen with any version of Windows, but it is going to go into what one might call a deprecated state. Now, I do want to just mention briefly, there's been a lot of news recently about extended security updates, and If you do a really cool YouTube video and send it to Microsoft, you can get free updates, or if you cash in your points or whatever. Anything Microsoft's talked about that's free for ESUs is targeted at the consumer. That is not for the Pro and Enterprise versions of Windows 10. So just if you've heard anything like, hey, they're going to give me free for a year, yeah, that's for consumer edition. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that intro there.
And
so the big question becomes, well, what do we do? And as Greg had already suggested, you can pay the $30 per device per year and continue to get extended security updates. But what, we really feel that there's some value here in moving to Windows 11. Now, Windows 11 is not a spring chicken either, and it's been around for quite some time. There are significant differences between Windows 10 and Windows 11, not enough to probably characterize it as a major operating system upgrade. It's definitely not Windows 8, Windows 7 to Windows 8, and we wouldn't want that anyways. So when we could look back and try and figure out how are we going to get our devices over to Windows 11, there's a lot of different methods which you could look at. But what we're proposing is that Intune is probably the simplest, easiest, and most future-proof for your needs. And if hopefully everyone at least has some working knowledge of what Intune is. Intune really is the evolution of the product that Microsoft calls Configuration Manager, which was an on-prem service for many years. I've worked at multiple organizations that use that product. It was a beast. I used to train people on that product as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. And we'd have a 5-day training course. Probably still not enough to be able to manage that solution. And you'd have dedicated people to work on it. Intune is completely cloud-based. It's completely cloud-based and is able to not only manage all of your endpoints, whether it's Windows or Mac devices or mobile devices, Chromebooks, you name it, but it also can handle a lot of the security of your environment as well. For the longest time, Microsoft positioned Intune as their endpoint solution. But more and more, if you look at their marketing, they're really touting it more as their security solution. It is an extension of their security platform. And in fact, if you're looking to use Copilot with Intune, you're actually going to be licensing Copilot for security. So that kind of gives you a sense of what we're talking about. So why Intune? Well, device management is a very critical component to managing your overall security. You absolutely still have to manage your firewalls. You have to manage your access control lists for all of your resources. But your endpoints are essentially the jumping off point for your users to those systems. So it is very important that these systems remain secure. And by remaining secure, that means staying on the latest operating system with the latest security capabilities in place. If you are a customer today that actually already has Business Premium, M365 Business Premium, or the F3 SKU, which is for frontline workers, or E3 or E5, you already have licenses for Intune. You're already covered. There's nothing additionally you'd have to pay in order to support this. So that's something that you also need to think about as far as the value that you're obtaining from your current licensing. Keeping in mind, if you don't have one of those SKUs, let's say maybe you're on Business Standard or you're just on the O365 SKUs, Intune can be added as a fairly inexpensive add-on to your existing environment. The other thing that we have kind of already mentioned there is it's cloud native. It's very scalable to thousands and thousands of devices. And it can handle pretty much the entire life cycle of those devices from the moment they are shipped to you from the vendor all the way to the time that they are end of life and maybe put on a shelf or sent to the landfill for destruction. From a standpoint of the ability to get the most bang for your buck, again, what we've found and what Microsoft has proven is that there's a lower total cost of ownership to using this to manage your endpoints than to using something like Configuration Manager, which is that behemoth, or even third-party tools where you might have to pick several third-party tools to encompass all the capabilities of Intune. And lastly, it's future ready. It's where Microsoft is putting their investments today. And they continue to strengthen and broaden its capabilities. Most recently, for those folks who have macOS devices, macOS is now a full participating member in Intune, almost to the same exact level as Windows, being able to manage updates, manage the full life cycle of those devices, push applications, you name it. Now, I've been around long enough to have seen what we call the old ways, or you might want to call it the traditional way or the legacy way. Pick your terminology. But those ways involve a tremendous amount of effort. Again, like I mentioned before, I've worked for organizations that use System Center Configuration Manager. And what that means is you typically are taking ownership of a device from the OEM, you're wiping that device off, you're laying down a golden image, you may be layering on group policies, you may be layering on additional applications, scripts through group policy. And then when there's an issue with that device or the device needs to be repurposed, that's a completely manual rebuild. You might boot up into a Pixie boot and install a new operating system and get you, a significant amount of the way there. There was a lot of infrastructure, though, that need to be maintained, and a lot of very deep skills that would need to be acquired for people to be able to use these. And there's also a significant amount of user downtime. As well, when it comes to things like patching the OS, there was inconsistent patching, and there was a plethora of different tools you could use. You can see from this acronym soup here, there was Windows Software Update Services, there was Windows Deployment Services, there was Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, there was SCCM, there are GPOs, there's other third-party tools. All of this just kind of creates a very stratified or fragmented tool set landscape. Contrast that with Intune, where things are policy-driven. They're cloud native, so depending on how you join those devices into Intune, you could either do it hybrid, where you still have traditional on-prem Active Directory domain controllers, or you could go pure cloud and Entra only join. And in that situation, your devices are manageable from no matter where they exist, whether someone's sitting in an airport, sitting in their house, their home office, halfway around the world. You still have the same ability to be able to reach out and touch those systems and configure them. As well, and again, this is kind of the theoretical, right? We always like to think of ourselves to be able to get to the point of zero touch. It is possible through a fair amount of work and planning, but what that means is you don't have to take possession of devices to basically manage them. And I think about some of our more traditional customers, they're still shipping us a device when there's something wrong with it, so that we could re-image it and then send it back to them. We much prefer to work with some of those more modern customers where we can just remotely address those issues with Intune. And then lastly, it's about repeatability. It's the ability to make sure that you can, time and time again, trust that the process is going to work as defined. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Intune works every single time, right? It's about the investment and time you put into making it work. But once you have that nailed down, it's having the confidence that if you need to do something, it will work the way it's supposed to. So as far as the immediate versus the long-term benefits here, the immediate is you get a more simplified upgrade to Windows 11. And I'm going to show you that as we go into the demo. If you think about what it took in the past to actually get from one OS version to the next, again, it usually included all those tool sets that I mentioned before. Now, really the idea should be, let's just leave the device in place and treat it just like it's part of any other patch cycle. Just as if it would be any other feature update for Windows 10 or even a quality update for Windows 11 or any other operating system. As well, one of the nice things about Intune, and we'll look at this too, is it will help you identify your incompatible devices. So you'll know ahead of time through a very simple interface of which devices may cause you issues, which devices will not support Windows 11 and need to be replaced, and which ones may have a driver issue or an application issue which you can address and then move on with your deployment. So there's very minimal downtime, there's very minimal effort. Again, for the most part, the upgrade goes similar to what a normal patch would be, although a little bit longer than if you were just going through the latest feature update. Another nice feature of Intune is the ability to have deployment rings. So this is where you can actually stage your rollout of your feature updates or even your OS updates across your device sets to make sure that you can control when and how those updates go out. So you might have a test ring where you're going to send it out to just a very small number of low impact users, and then you kind of ramp it up until you get to the very end where you have very broad rings where you're targeting a lot of systems. Again, that's a very nice capability that many of the other products that Microsoft has had over the years didn't really have the ability to do. And then lastly, again, it's about being able to enforce those policies around security, compliance, and configuration. All the things that we think of what group policy can do today, but instead using a cloud-based solution to do that work. Long term, you end up with a unified platform, not just for Windows. So if you're using something today to manage your Apple products or your Android products, this is where you can bring it all under one single pane of glass that is consistent. There's a consistent look and feel and a consistent approach. It also helps with any areas where we're trying to get some additional zero trust components in here. And it's kind of a bit of a marketing buzz term, but really zero trust is baked into the Intune environment and comes down through things like conditional access policies, where we're validating your users every single time they touch our resources to confirm they are who they say they are and they're not presenting any undue risk to the organization. I already mentioned repeatability and standardization, but lastly, it also provides some very detailed, proactive analytics to help you, again, determine which systems may or may not be updating properly, but also reporting on how well you're succeeding in that process. Again, some of the things that are lacking today with the tool sets. So ultimately, what we end up with here is a blueprint approach. You can think of this as you head into trying to get those last few devices, or maybe more so if you've taken a little bit longer to put a plan together, as a test case for all of your future OS updates and patching. And so if we can get it nailed down now, you kind of have this repeatable process for the future. So with that said, I'm going to actually transition now, and I'm going to move over to demo. And Greg, just let me know if you can see my screen.
Looks good, lots of colors.
Beautiful, we love lots of colors. So what I'm about to show you is kind of a canned demo. Not that we're afraid to do live demos, but this demo was so well laid out, we decided we were going to use this for this particular webinar today. This is actually a demo that you can go back through yourself. If you have Intune and you're familiar with the Intune management portal, right from the home page, these are basically scripted demos that you can walk through. So the URL would be intune.microsoft.com. And if you have at least one license out there, you can go through and take a look at these. So what we're going to be doing in this demo is showing you how to set up Intune deployment rings. There's two fundamental ways to do this in Intune. One is through what's known as auto patch, and another is just through manually creating them yourself. And if I were to create an analogy here, I'm not a big Harry Potter fan, but my kids grew up watching Harry Potter. And if you remember, they all got selected and moved into their various groups, and they used this thing called the sorting hat, right? And the sorting hat would pick which house you belong to and would put you into that. That's kind of what auto patch is. When you turn on auto patch, it builds all the policies for you. It builds all the rings for you, and then based on the device groups you create, it will actually sort your devices into various rings automatically and set up the policies. If you're not comfortable with that, you're probably better off going the manual route, and that's kind of what we're going to show you today. So we'll walk you through that. But bear in mind, if you want to check out the auto patch documentation, that's there as well, and I will point out as we go along where that exists. So we're going to jump right in here. And the first thing we're going to do is refresh the screen because I think it timed out on me. There we go. So the first thing you want to do is go to devices, and over here in this device column, I will admit that the interface for Intune is getting a little crowded these days. They are always working on trying to declutter it a little bit. We're going to click on Windows Updates under Devices, and from here, what we're going to do is we're going to click on Update Rings, and we're going to start building our first update ring. So we'll go ahead and create a profile. And at this point, we got to give it a name. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and call it Windows Update Test Ring. Pretty simple. I always do recommend a description. We just had a conversation internally within our own organization where this is probably the least used field, but probably could be the most beneficial to your organization. At this point, I then get the opportunity to go through all of the update ring settings and determine how the updates will behave. And you'll see there's quite a few things in here. One of those is which, whether you're going to allow Microsoft product updates, these are beyond just Windows, whether you want to allow Windows drivers, again, something that you typically didn't get with all those other tools was the ability to actually push drivers to systems. Where this might actually come in very useful is if you have an incompatible device, and we'll look at the reports later, that has a driver issue, theoretically, you could use Windows updates in Intune to fix the driver issue and then bring that device back into compliance so you could then roll out Windows 11 to it. And you can see that a lot of these settings, if you're familiar with GPOs, are very similar to what you would specify in a GPO if you were handling your Windows updates that way. Specifically though, it's calling me out and wanting to be to set the feature update uninstall period. So nice thing about this too is you can install updates, but you can also roll them back very easily. You can literally go in and actually click devices and roll back an update if it in fact caused an issue. So essentially what the default period is for the rollback is 30 days. So you get a month of time. Hopefully at that point, whatever issues you're having will surface. You can also then choose what the automatic update behavior is. So you can say auto install at a maintenance time. But there are additional options there. So you can, for instance, say auto install and restart at a specific maintenance time, restart at a scheduled time, or auto install and reboot without any in-user control. So in this case, they're going to set it back to default. We can also have the option to pause updates, for instance. So if you know that maybe Microsoft made a big boo-boo one month and you didn't want to push any updates, you could just simply disable them as well. Again, we're not going to go through all these settings, but you get a good sense of what we're talking about here. So we're actually going to go ahead and pause that by clicking disable. And we're also going to go down here and set some deadline settings. So we're going to click that as allow. And finally, we're going to look at, you can see here the number of deadline for feature updates. So this essentially gives a window of opportunity for your users to ignore you before they have to take the update. Again, this is not really all that dissimilar from what you would get in group policy. So in this case, they're going to set that to 5 days for feature updates, 0 for quality, and a 0 grace period, which means once the timer has expired, it is expired. There is no additional hemming and hawing by the users. So at this point, what you need to do is actually assign this policy to some devices. So the thing that you do have to do, which we're not showing in this particular demo, is you need to create a Windows device group and put your Intune devices into that group and assign them to them. So you can have multiple update policies. So for instance, you may have one that's a bit more liberal, one that's a little bit more stringent, and then assign it to different sets of devices. So we'll go ahead and click next on this. And here we'll go ahead and select a Windows device group. In this case, we're using the updates test group. We'll click next. And at this point, you can see it assigned up there on the top. You can add filters, and filters are pretty neat because they'll actually, based on certain criteria, maybe filter out a device. So think of this as, again, with GPOs where you're changing the GPO permissions and excluding a device from getting a policy. And then you get an overview of what you're going to create. You go ahead and click the create button. And at that point, you now have your update ring. So the next thing we're going to show you is actually the driver updates. And again, this is something that we don't typically get the ability to do with all of the legacy tools that Microsoft has. But again, this can be very beneficial. There's been plenty of times when, troubleshooting devices came down to just not having the latest drivers. So I'm going to go click next here. We'll click on the driver updates. We'll create a new profile just like we did for the update rings. We'll go ahead and give it a name. Go ahead and choose the settings. So in this case, we get the ability with drivers, which is really nice, to be able to approve them or not. So in this case, you can either say, I'm going to manually approve and deploy them. So once they start coming in and they've been discovered, and it discovers your devices and tries to find all the different drivers that are needed, you can go in and specifically say, I approve this driver, this driver, this driver, this version of this driver. In this case, though, they're rolling the dice and just saying, we're going to automatically approve all recommended driver updates. And then we're going to also specify how many days we'll wait until those drivers updates are available. In this case, we're going to say 0, which means they'll become available as soon as we approve, or as soon as they're automatically approved. Similarly, again, we have to assign it to a device group. So we'll come out here and do a little search, and we're going to look for that update test group. And we'll go ahead and select that and assign that group. Gives me a summary that'll affect 8 devices and 3 users. This is targeted directly towards devices, but it's telling you there's 3 users associated with those devices. And then finally, again, we'll go ahead and create that policy. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is feature updates. The feature updates are those big ones, right? Those are the ones that come out typically every 6 months. And right now, if you are on Windows 11, you probably just started getting notification for Windows 11 25 H2, right? So that would be an example of a feature update. So again, we'll go ahead and click Create Profile, kind of the routine you're getting familiar with here. We'll go ahead and give it a name. And then what you need to do in this box right here, you'll notice is you can choose which updates you want, or feature updates you want to make available. So you'll notice that Windows 11 is seen as a feature update. And there are features within Windows 11 as well. Also, there's a box down here that says, when a device isn't eligible to run Windows 11, install the latest Windows 10 feature instead. So that's kind of nice. And so if you realize, well, I can't get that device to Windows 11, but I do want to keep it as current as possible on Windows 10 at least. You do have to come in here periodically, though, when new feature updates are released, to essentially determine which ones you're approving and saying, okay, we'll now release the next feature update out to the masses. So we'll check that box. And then down here, you then also get options of how quickly we'll be able to roll that out. So you can make them available gradually, or you can make it available on a specific date or as soon as it becomes available. So in this case, we're choosing to do it gradually. And you can see that there are two groups. So you can say the first group availability, and then the last, and then you can determine how many days in between. So we'll go ahead and establish that we're going to make the first group availability on the 20th of December. Like obviously you can see this was a little while ago. And the last one will be one month later on the 20th of January. And then lastly, the number of days we'll do is 7 days in between. Again, we add our groups. Come out here and find our device group. We find our update test group, and we choose that. Say next, and we create that. And that essentially is the demo for this particular process. So what I'm going to do now is actually have Greg switch over, and I want to show you a little bit about the reporting and what that looks like. And we'll try and get through that as quickly as possible. So Greg, do you mind sharing your screen?
Yeah, Rebecca, if you could make me a presenter so I can share real quick. There we go. Thank you. I'll be there in 2 seconds.
And while Greg's doing that, I want to point out that this, if you're not on Intune, This is something we can help you with. We're going to give you a link, or actually an opportunity to email us if you'd like us to do kind of a free assessment, figure out what it would take you to get you on Intune, and then kind of get this process in place for you. All right. Okay, great. Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
And so what we're looking, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so what we're looking at right now is the report section of Intune. And specifically, what we want to do is go down to the area for Windows updates, and which is up under the device. There we go, or right there, right? Perfect. Oh, you were there. Nope. 2 more down. 1 more down. Perfect. And so this is where we get to see some of our initial reports. And you'll see that we generated some of these earlier. I just need to make my screen a little bit bigger. So give me 1 second. Did that change anything?
I zoomed in a little bit.
Okay. I'm going to make this bigger. There we go. Perfect. So you'll notice in the top, we look at the feature updates. You can see which feature updates we deployed through those policies. And you can see how many are in progress, how many succeeded, how many have been initiated, how many were canceled, also how many needed to be rolled back. That's also a nice feature as well. If you scroll down, we can also see, on the quality updates. So right now we have a cumulative update for Windows, and the release date was the 9th of December. And we have 100 in progress, 597 successful, and 25 with errors. We'll show you later that there are ways you can go into report and see what those errors are as well. And then lastly, on the bottom section is around driver updates. Now, unfortunately for this tenant, we don't actually have any data to show, but it would be very similar to what you're already seeing. It would show you the drivers that were approved and what the progress of those drivers were. Now, if we want to get a little bit deeper, and we talked earlier about the ability to show you compatibility for Windows 11 for your existing devices. I want to show you where that is, because that becomes very powerful for the purpose of figuring out which devices will I need to replace and which devices will I need to maybe remediate before I can get there. So go ahead and click on the reports button there. Okay, and you can see there's 6 major reports. Remember, we talked about the feature updates and the quality updates. What we want to look though at first is the Windows Feature Update Device Readiness Report. So let's go ahead and click on that. And from here, the first thing you need to do is choose your operating system. So we kind of did this already, but Greg, go ahead and click on Change Target OS. And here's where you have to choose which version. So again, there may be something that gets introduced in 25H2, which just put out, that may make a device that was compatible incompatible. We haven't added that to the list yet, because I don't know if they've actually put it in Intune just yet, because it literally just came out. So we're going to choose the latest version of Windows 11, which is 24H2. And the other thing you have to choose is a scope tag. The scope tags are ways to combine your devices into certain groupings. If you don't have any scope tags, you still have to choose a scope tag, which essentially is the default, which is essentially all devices. So we'll choose default. And then at this point, what you'll do is you'll basically generate the report. And you'll see down below, we did that earlier, but we're also filtering this right now. So in the drop-down where it says readiness status, Greg has actually filtered it out. So we're only showing high-risk devices. And you can see that there's essentially 6 devices there, 5 devices that are considered high risk. Now, if we click on one of those devices and drill down into it, we can actually see some information about the device, and we can actually look at the various tabs. You'll notice when we get to the drivers tab, there is a Wi-Fi driver that would block the upgrade from happening. So as we mentioned before, if you're using drivers to update your devices, you could approve this driver as it sits on Windows 10 today and push the most current, so it will remove that block from upgrade. You could rerun the report and verify that that device is no longer having an issue. So let's close that flyout, Greg. And I just want to see if we had any replace options too. So under readiness status, can you just do the drop down one more time and choose replace device? And I'm not sure we have any here, but we have to generate it again. I'm not sure how you all are doing it, but it's it's not the easiest process to figure out whether or not your devices are going to be able to support Windows 11 without a lot of additional effort. You may have an RMM tool that does that for you, great. And you'll notice there is one, right? So right there, and the requirement is it's got a TPM issue. Surprise, surprise, right? TPM being the Trusted Platform Module, which is what's used for actually identifying logins. It's also the chip that handles BitLocker encryption. So Microsoft does require a more advanced version of that, and it looks as though this device does not have that. So unless you can unsolder it from the board and put a new one in, this device is going to probably go the way of the dodo. So, all right, one more last report, and then I'm going to hand it over to Greg. So, Greg, if you could go back to using the breadcrumb trail, I want to show you kind of the opposite view. In this case, instead of looking at it from the device perspective, let's look at it from the perspective of what are the things that are causing my issues with the possibility of upgrading. So is it drivers, is it applications, is it hardware? So click on the Windows Feature Update Compatibility Risks Report. Nope, not that one. There we go. And so you see we've ran this before. Again, you have to pick the version of the OS. We're not going to go through that right now. We've already done that. You can also choose the asset type and the risk status. But in this case, you can see we have 2 that are medium risk and 2 that are high risk. But it actually shows you in this view from the perspective of what's the blocker, not from the device perspective. So you can see we have an Intel Bluetooth problem, a Wi-Fi driver issue, so some Logitech download software, and also a Realtek Wi-Fi driver as well. And then in that middle column, you can see those links that show you the affected devices. So if Greg clicks on the Bluetooth, you can see, and he goes to affected devices. Here's all list of all the affected devices that will have that. Now you'll notice that it's not going to block the upgrade. It's just going to essentially remove the application. And most likely, again, you want to test, this is why you do deployment rings, would most likely replace it with whatever driver Windows 11 has to support that particular device. But it's not a bad idea to test one, make sure that actually is the case. But in this case, it's telling you, we're going to remove it during the upgrade. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Greg, and Greg's going to talk a little bit about Nerdio, and we're going to hopefully have a few minutes here for some quick Q&A. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so we've been showing you Intune and all of its glory. So just we're eating our own dog food. So this actually is the Intune running at ProArch. We're 400 and something employees, and devices. So this is actually our tenant. We've got 409 Windows devices, and you can see, if you use Intune a lot, navigating this and going in here and doing configuration policies and doing conditional access and compliance and running the reports that Jim was talking about and doing the update rings, it's not a bad interface. It's pretty decent, but it takes some time getting used to. We have a number of engineers, and our engineers are very driven to go shortest route to ground. So we don't have time for our engineers when they're doing support for customers to waddle around inside here trying to find something. So we've adopted this. This is basically Nerdio, and Nerdio just sits on top of Intune. It still does everything through Intune. So Intune's still the delivery mechanism. All Nerdio is an automation and orchestration platform. But as you can see, it very easily allows you maybe an easier way to kind of look at things and pivot and look at compliance and configuration and looking at an individual device and looking at the details of the device. It's a different way of looking at the data that's over there in Intune. And Nerdio is basically using the Graph API to pull that data in and display it inside of Nerdio. And Nerdio also integrates, by the way, with Defender and all of those type things. I'm just going to hit cancel real quick because I just wanted to show you. It sees all the same apps that are inside of Intune. I did hear that there was a little bit of an Azure slowdown today in East US 2, which is why it's going slow, which is why live demos are always crazy. to do. I'll come back to apps. But the update reports kind of give you a high level of what we saw over here in the reports that we were looking at with Jim. This is basically a more higher level, and it has the same things and the same numbers if it was running at normal speed, which it's not. It will catch up in just a second.
Hey,
Things
Greg,
like the
quick
update
question.
rings.
Real quick question. So the updates, the reports that Nerdio provides, can those be scheduled and actually sent?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those
So there's a
update, the
distinction.
reports can
Yeah.
be scheduled, they can be sent, and they can also create alerts so that you
Yeah,
can
and
alert on.
Yep, that's where there's a little bit of a difference between Intune, right? Intune today doesn't have a sending mechanism to send those reports. There's an API. You certainly can, dig into that data if you like. But the nice thing about Nerdio is it kind of gives you all that automation and orchestration that Greg was referring to.
There we go. So again, it's kind of just bubbling things up on a higher level dashboard and just giving you a different way of looking at things, a different way of looking at those update rings. Basically what we were looking at on multiple pages in the other interface over here, Nerdio kind of brings it all together into single interfaces. So again, it doesn't replace Intune, it augments it. And this is something that we use to automate and orchestrate what we're doing for both ourselves. We use Nerdio for our internal, but we also use it for our managed security customers and for our managed customers to manage their environments using Intune. So our engineers can go in underneath the hood and they can obviously come in here and do it, or if they want to be a little quicker to get something done, they can come in and do it using the Nerdio interface. So I just wanted to show you, Nerdio is just a way to kind of make the administration experience. It'd be admin only. It has nothing to do with the user experience, but it would make Intune a little bit easier to manage, in my humble opinion. This interface, probably needs a good overhaul, whereas Nerdio has been revising theirs like every month. They update theirs. So I just wanted to share that real quick, and we'll leave off there. And I think we're ready to take questions.
While we're doing that, I'll reshare. Rebecca, can you reshare? Give me reshare permissions.
Yes.
Thank you. And do we have any questions at this point, Rebecca?
Looks like we have one as of now. This person has 75 new Windows 11 PCs. How would autopilot play in with the manual process in Intune?
So if you have 75 new devices, if you already have Intune, the suggestion would be to get those devices into autopilot right from the get-go. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can have the manufacturer upload your hardware IDs into your tenant for you, or you can essentially load them yourself. But once they're in there, you literally are off to the races and can do all the stuff that we showed today. In addition to being able to manage the life cycle of that device by being able to either reset it or wipe it, or whatever the case may be. So hopefully that answered your question. Go ahead and share my screen again. Any other questions, Rebecca?
No other questions as of right now.
Okay. So one of the things we like to do when we do these events is we want to leave you with some takeaways. So we're going to be sending out a scripted demo steps similar to what we did today in our own demo that will allow you to kind of go through and try some of this stuff yourself. As I said, that demo that we did is already linked in the homepage in Intune that you can go through yourself. But if you wanted to try this in your own environment, we're going to give you a way to do that as well. We're also going to provide a deployment checklist, which kind of goes through all of the things you have to keep in mind about what you have to have in place in order to make this work. We kind of skipped a bunch of steps here, and we kind of jumped right to assuming you had Intune. But honestly, it's not a big lift. It really truly isn't. If you have a domain today, or if you are looking to go more modern and bring new devices on as Intune only, the guts and the bits for Intune are already baked into the operating system since before Windows, even before Windows 10. So if there's not a heavy lift there. And lastly, Rebecca is going to provide an email address that if you want to reach out to us and maybe get an hour or so to discuss with us, strategy planning, you can certainly do that, and we'll be happy to join you on a call. And then lastly, I'll move on to the next slide. We did our Q&A. Any other questions come in, Rebecca? I know we're at 1 minute over.
No more questions.
So the real takeaway here, right? Begin your IT modernization journey. Think about whether or not you already possess these tools within your stack and how you could best leverage them. Explore some of the support resources that we're going to provide, and then make sure that you have a plan for how you're going to continue to use these tools going forward for both the next operating system upgrade, which I have a suspicion something's going to be announced at Ignite this year, but also to help you with patching and driver updates and all of those things. So it has been an absolute pleasure to have you all here today, and I hope the best for all of you in getting to that deadline. As Greg said, things aren't going to stop when October 14th comes, but don't ignore it either. It's important, and it definitely needs to